Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Marilyn, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you doing this morning?
Doing okay, thanks. How you doing?
Oh, good, thank you. I'm calling from Port-au-Port, and I want to talk about the recent Qalipu election held from October 18th to the 25th.
Sure.
Okay, so on October 25th, there was a public statement issued by Canada Post in Stephenville, and I'll read it out. It says, "To whom it may concern, this letter is to acknowledge that Canada Post Corporation in Stephenville, Newfoundland, received a large mailing, approximately 1,500 to 2,000 letters, from Qalipu First Nation with inaccurate, incorrect mailing addresses. Because of this, all letters were undeliverable and had to be sent, returned to sender, to the address below. Qalipu First Nation, care of IntelliVote Systems, 12 to 40 Thornhill Drive, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, B3B1S1. So, Patty, that is 2,000 Qalipu members that did not have the opportunity to vote, and that is just what we know of. What about other post offices who did not post how many they returned, or that they even received any voter packages at all, for that matter? We don't know. So I talked to an employee at the Port-au-Port post office and asked how many voter packages had been returned from that location. And I'll just let you know there's 2 on the peninsula. There's Port-au-Port and there's Lourdes. And she said that 10% had somewhat of a correct address and were able to be sent out to the residents, and 90% were returned to sender, about 100 voter packages. She said it was unreal, like they made up the address and the names. So the one in Lourdes, I know they returned to sender as well, but I don't know what their numbers were, but everything was included in that 1,500 to 2,000 that Stephenville returned to sender. So just to give you some context, in the last Qalipu election, there were 1,500 members that voted in the Port-au-Port ward. So that's the Port-au-Port Peninsula and Kippens. This election, there was over 900 that voted. That's 600 voters less than the last time. And it's because people did not have the opportunity to vote. Majority of the people I spoke with in my area had to call in to get a PIN number to vote because they did not receive a voter package or an email. Now, some of these members who have been corresponding for years with Qalipu through email did not receive a PIN. These are major discrepancies, Patty, and if this company, IntelliVote, cannot get the voter PINs out to members properly, how can we trust they got the outcome of this election correctly? So some people didn't even know there was an election, because if you don't receive the weekly newsletter through email or you missed the news, then you had no way of knowing.
Even though, I mean, we had several discussions regarding the Qalipu election on this show. I know the newsroom covered it as well. So I think the attempt was made to make people aware of the election, but the problems that you point to are very real. I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but was there an effort prior to the voting days opening for Qalipu Nation and its members to reconcile the voters list to make sure that the information was correct? Because there's always going to be people move in between elections, whether it be municipally, Qalipu, provincially, federally. So, but there's a reconciliation, or pardon me, there's an effort to reconcile the voter list to ensure the accuracy of the names and the addresses. Did that happen? No.
There was nothing like that, Patty. No. And you know, there needs to be a new election called, because and everyone has to be notified, and the best way to do it is to go through that list. So, I mean, I would assume that IntelliVote received the voter list from Qalipu First Nation. I just have to assume that. So, did they get it wrong? I don't know. Did IntelliVote have a glitch in the system, whereas, you know, everything went, you know, haywire? Because, I mean, if you got names and addresses that, you know, the post offices haven't heard of, then obviously there's a major issue. And Patty, there needs to be a new election called, and this has to be done properly. And I would suggest that it be done via in-person, and preferably by people, as is done with provincial and federal elections, so everybody has the opportunity. And, like, for example, here we have a polling station during the provincial and federal elections. So I know the people in my area. So that's the same for other areas. So if there's something that's missing, it can be rectified for the next election. So, I mean, this is a serious issue, and this needs to be rectified.
It's interesting. There was 12 positions on the ballot. 12 were acclaimed, or 6 were acclaimed, and 6 were competitive. Or I don't know how competitive they were. Like, even in the race for chief, Jenny Brake, who was the interim chief, she came out on top. She had about 2,800, almost 2,900 votes. The gentleman in second had about 1,600-ish. A couple of the rest of them were really not close at all. But there was one in Flat Bay that was pretty close. I think the winner only had like 20 votes more than the second place runner-up. And yet the exploits number was the only real competitive race where there may be some implications is chief.
Well, yes, I think, overall it has to be, like, this is not about the outcome, Patty, it's about the process.
I totally understand what you're saying. I totally get it.
They have to have the equal opportunity to vote. This is very important, and it needs to be rectified. So that's just my 2 cents on this morning. I think that people have to be aware of it, and they have 30 days to appeal the election process. So I would suggest to people, if they didn't get the opportunity to vote and they feel that this is, corrupt, I would say, or not corrupt, but injustice, that they file an appeal. And if they're not sure and they need help in that process, they can reach out to me. My last name is ROWE. I'm in the phone book. They can call me, and I'll gladly help them. Patty, can I just shift gears for a second?
Very quickly. I'm late for the news, but go ahead.
Okay, I want to talk about John Risley's 20-year battle with the Canada Revenue Agency over tax arrears in the millions. I mean, here's a man who is not in good standing with the feds. And, I mean, if that was you and I, they'd be knocking on our door. If it was a small business, they'd be threatening and, for $1,000. But this man is battling 20 years, and here they, instead of penalizing him, they give him or lend him $128 million. So, Patty, that just doesn't make sense to me.
But he's doing the same thing we all do if we run afoul of CRA. That's in court, isn't it?
It is. But, I mean, why would the feds even, entertain this businessman with such bad standing with them? That doesn't make sense to me. Like I said, if it was you and I or a small business, we wouldn't have a leg to stand on. So, obviously, they didn't do a credit check on him.
I think his credit's probably okay. I appreciate the time, Marilyn. Thanks for the call this morning.
All right, take care, Patty.
You too. Bye-bye.